1290 CJBK London. It's 154.
Welcome, music fans, to the Music Virgins No More podcast. Now here are your hosts, John and Jason.
Hello, and welcome to the Music Virgins No More podcast. I'm John Schlarbaum.
And I'm Jason Kavanaugh.
For those new to the program, the show is based on my memories of top 40 music between 1980 and 1982, when between the ages of 13 and 16, I created 106 weekly music charts alone in my childhood bedroom in southwestern Ontario.
The past few weeks, we've discussed the music leading to the creation of the charts, and tonight we delve into the music John was listening to in October 1980.
Now, in episode 5, Jason, we counted down the top singles, albums, groups for October the 4th, 1980. And today we're going to be discussing 3 charts, or at least an overview of 3 charts, for the weeks ending October 11th, October 18th, and October 25th, as, really not a lot of new music debuted during this time period.
And for those of you keeping track at home, I know I sure am, on October 4th, 1980, John's number 1 single was Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. And the number 1 album, drumroll, was The Game by Queen. And number 1 group, now here's the surprise, was Queen.
Now, in my defense, Jason, they were very popular outside the walls of my house as well. And they would hold down these 3 top positions for 6 straight weeks until Another One Bites the Dust, bites the dust and drops to number 2. But that's not until November 15th, which is another show completely.
Well, I think we can quickly dispense of chart number 8 for October 11th, as there were no new singles or albums debuting.
Boo.
However, the Monks song Drugs in My Pocket was deemed this week's fastest mover, going from 12 to 8. However, 2 weeks earlier, it had debuted at 7 before tanking to 12, and now is on its way up again.
Yeah, I find that odd as well, as I don't really recall many other singles or albums yo-yoing up and down like that. They pop on the chart, they debut, and it's like that's where they were that week, and then the next week it's like, okay, they're really making a move upwards. I don't know any occasions where somebody debuted, say at even number 8, and then the next week dropped to number 9, and unfortunately, like later on in the show, we're going to learn actually of another hit that sort of does the same thing. So it's not a complete anomaly that this happened. Now, we've discussed the Monks on a few other episodes and know how much I like them. Their debut album, Bad Habits, sat at number 2 behind Queen's The Game for 6 weeks after all. So really, there's no reason to believe I got bored with Drugs in My Pocket that quickly, yet somehow, for at least a 7-day period, I did. Who knows?
Now, if we skip ahead to chart number 9 for October 18th, that song bizarrely leaps into the number 4 position for 1 week, but falls to 8, and then 12 the following week, and then poof, it's gone after only 6 weeks total. A very strange one-hit wonder trajectory.
Yeah, my only guess really, Jason, is it became sort of a novelty song to me, and the appeal just wore off, even though the album continued to do really well. I have no other explanation for it.
Maybe if you had started doing drugs, that might have helped.
I might have, and something bad happened to me during that time of partaking. Maybe I was smoking a J. Oh no, that was with Paul Simon.
With Paul, yeah. Okay, well, also on chart number 9, you had the rare occurrence of 4 new singles debuting, and 2 of them are like in my all-time favorite songs even. Hit Me With Your Best Shot by Pat Benatar at number 7. Should have been higher. The Wanderer by Donna Summer at number 9. We'll get back to her later.
We will.
Dreamer, seriously, one of my Desert Island songs off of one of my Desert Island albums by Supertramp. That was at 11. And I Got You by Split Enz at number 13.
Now, the Dreamer song is actually from the live album called Paris.
Oh, that's right.
What is the album that it's originally from?
It's from Crime of the Century.
Crime of the Century, which I know is your favorite. That is your Desert Island. Maybe one day we'll do a Desert Island episode, like a bonus episode. Jason's, Desert Island, and then my Desert Island.
I couldn't go if I could only choose one, John.
No, but on a desert island, you can, well, now with, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you fit a whole pile on if you had, a USB, but I mean, you can listen to it once and then there's nowhere to plug in, thing. I don't know how really because technically, if you had a record player, even without power, with your finger, you could make it turn.
We'll have to set up some parameters for that episode. If you have
We
if
will.
you have John's old 250 gig iPod and
Yes.
and a solar charger, what would be your Okay, let's move on.
If we could memorize every album of every song that we knew and it's just between our ears, that would be our desert island. How we would do it. How we would remember what were the top 5 albums that we remembered the most. We'll do something. So now, Jason, here's a little pop question for you. Without looking it up, which of those 4 new songs ended up on the year-end 1980 top 50 chart? Now, here's a clue. 3 of them would get into the top 10 on the regular charts over the next few weeks. So was it Hit Me With Your Best Shot, The Wanderer, Dreamer, or I Got You? Which of those ended up being on the year-end chart? The top 50 year-end chart.
Jeez, that's a hard one. I'm gonna say I can only choose one.
Okay, no, there's one of them. Which of these 4 new songs ended up on the year-end chart? So no, you can pick as many as you want.
Okay, well,
How many do you think actually ended up?
I'm gonna. If I only had to pick one, I'm gonna say "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." If I could pick 2, "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" and "Dreamer," and it better not be "The Wanderer."
What about I Got You? Just because it started slow doesn't mean it doesn't move up. But the answer is Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Dreamer, and I Got You ended up on the year-end 1980 chart. So Donna Summer did not even make, and she makes, an impact on my charts over the next few weeks. But by the end of the year, I think really it's sort of like drugs in my pocket. It became kind of a novelty song, but we'll get there.
And that's understandable that she got moved because the rest of this year, there's some good songs that come up.
Yep.
Okay, now with 4 new songs entering and 4 older singles dating back to the very first chart that have dropped off, Play the Game by Queen was a former number 1. Clones by Alice Cooper has sadly dropped off.
So good.
Emotional Rescue by the Rolling Stones thankfully has dropped off. And My Mistake by the King Bees sadly has dropped off. So this leaves All Night Long by Joe Walsh as the final song of the original top 15 from chart number 1. Now, we usually do this segment near the end of the program, but I have a question regarding this week's new singles, The Wanderer by Donna Summer.
And what would your question be there, Jason? La, la.
Well, before I get to the question, I just,
Okay.
in defense, there's something that this song does that I feel that the 80s in general did really well.
Okay.
And that's setting a mood and an aesthetic for the song right away.
Okay.
Right away. My question is, what exactly were you thinking, John?
I don't know. I remember being enamored by the song at the time. I don't know why. I knew who Donna Summer was, and Bad Girls had come out the year before, and like she was an artist that you knew, but in this song, I don't know. It just had this. When I listen to it today, I'm really not sure why I was so crazy for it, because it's a very heavy synth song with really kind of a basic music track. You may disagree with me on that one. What did you think about that? Now it's very heavy synth. Like,
It's very heavy synth.
okay, I'm not sure there are any other actual musical instruments on it.
Well, one of my favorite rhythm guitar players who was all over the place in the 80s on Michael Jackson records and Toto records, Steve Lukather, Guitar God.
Right.
So there's some saving grace for her, and like I said, she set a mood, but otherwise it kind of goes nowhere for me. There's no vocal harmonies. Her vocal is just kind of weird. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my my John, what were you thinking sticker this week.
Apparently, after the Disco Sucks movement started to gain ground in the summer of 1979, Donna Summer, who was the Queen of Disco decided she needed a more, rock / new wave album. And she got some really big people to help her. I mean, you've already mentioned, Steve Lukather of Toto fame. She had Jeff Skunk Baxter of Steely Dan and Dewey Brothers. And she also had Harold Faltermeyer on keyboards and synthesizers. And he would become a household name in a few years with the theme from Beverly Hills Cop. The album also was produced by longtime collaborator Giorgio Moroder, and he was dubbed the father of disco. So you have the Queen of Disco, the father of disco, and literally he is, credited with pioneering the Euro disco and electric dance music. And really, as for The Wanderer, it really does stand out from the rest of the songs on this week's chart, though. I will admit. I'm not saying I made a mistake, but it is very sort of out there. Like I stubbed my toe and, went crashing down, a set of stairs and then, landed on top of Pat Benatar.
Right.
and then continued on for the rest of the week.
Well, a few minutes ago, we mentioned the Rolling Stones and Alice Cooper, two other very successful artists from the 70s trying to keep up with the newest trends at the start of the 80s. In April 79, her previous album, Bad Girls, topped the album charts, as did the title track and follow-up single, Hot Stuff. It's also considered one of the greatest disco albums of all time.
And yet, Jason, 18 months later, North Americans' musical tide had turned, and the Wanderer album and single did, just okay business. So, like, the early 1980s were not great for Donna. She recorded one follow-up album that was not released at all and shelved by Geffen Records, and a second one that only hit number 20 on the charts.
However, she would bounce back big time in 83 with her 11th studio album, She Works Hard for the Money, featuring the hit title track, which went to number 4 in Canada, 3 on Billboard's Top 100, and number 1 on Billboard's Hot Black Singles charts.
And by then, the song fit perfectly into other, singles, on the radio at the time. Songs like Sweet Dreams Are Made of This by the Eurythmics or Our House by Madness. Even Billy Joel's Tell Her About It and 1999 by Prince. So really it comes down to, timing is everything.
So you're saying that The Wanderer was just ahead of its time then, John?
I don't know if it was ahead of its time. It might have been a little bit ahead of its time. It was trying to do something different. Like I think every big artist out there will always try to do something a little bit against not their grain, but they try to reinvent themselves. And sometimes it works and, they continue on. And sometimes, it just completely flops. And, I think, she tried to, stay current and up to date with everything. And it didn't quite work out for a couple of years. And then, then she was back, which was good. Well, we all need a little Donna Summers in our life.
Well, good for her. Okay, well, getting back to chart number 9 for the week ending October 18th, 1980, the New Zealand group Split Enz, with no D, made an impressive first appearance on all 3 charts with the song I Got You at number 13. The album True Colors entering at number 6 and storming the group's chart at number 11, pushing poor Christopher Cross out of the top 15.
Poor Christopher Cross. He went sailing out of... Now, for New Zealand and Australian music fans, they had been following this group since 1975. Okay, so they've been around, and True Colors was actually their 6th album, and apparently it caused quite a bit of a rift between their old fans and new fans. And just like we were talking about Donna Summer trying to do, something different, I'm not sure these guys tried to do something different, but this is what singer and percussionist Noel Crombie said. He said, I think we split our audience to some extent. It seems like a real sort of dividing point. Suddenly we had a lot of teenage girls in our audience, and it moved into a different kind of vibe in terms of live performance. And also referring to their debut album, the 1975 album, singer and songwriter Tim Finn agreed, saying, if you were a mental notes freak, that's the first album, you might have taken a step back at that point. Now, this 1980 album, True Colors, and the single I Got You had massive success down under that translated well to the UK and obviously North America. It was like our first introduction to them.
Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing way more about them in the coming weeks, including their inventive marketing approach to the True Colors album cover and disc art. Also, how it ended up tied at number 11, the longest lasting chart albums, over the course of your 106 charts.
Which I actually found very surprising when I discovered that myself. And also, Jason, maybe we can discuss why Fleetwood Mac, one of your favorite bands, would play I Got You on their 2018-2019 concert tour and nothing from their 1979 double album Tusk. I bet you have a few thoughts on that.
No, not too many. If you would call them Fleetwood Mac at that point, but that's another.
What would you call them? What were you calling them?
I may have called them, with no Lindsey Buckingham, I may have called them Fleetwood Hack or something like that.
I don't think you're alone in that either. Although October 1980 wasn't a spectacular month for new music, it sets up the 5 weeks covered in November nicely, during which time there are 2 new number 1 singles and a new number 1 album. But for right now, Jason, let's recount the rankings on chart number 10 for the week ending October 25th.
On the singles charts, you had Another One Bites the Dust by Queen, 5 weeks at number 1.
Crazy.
Number 2, I'm All Right by Kenny Loggins, up 1. Number 3, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Pat Benatar, up 4 in her second week.
Making moves.
The Wanderer, making moves. The Wanderer, Donna Summer, up 5 in her second week. Number 5, Upside Down, Diana Ross, down 2, keep going down, where she had stayed for 2 weeks. I Got You, who we just talked about, the Split Ends, up 7 in their second week, and this week's fastest mover. Dreamer, the live version by Supertramp, up 4 in their second week. 8, Drugs in My Pocket, The Monks, down 4 on their way down the chart again. Touch and Go by The Cars, down from number 6, their highest position. At number 10, Games Without Frontiers, Peter Gabriel, down 5 spots. 11, Cocaine, Tulsa Time, Can't Move Down Fast Enough. Good Riddance, Eric Clapton. Number 12, All Out of Love, Air Supply, up from number 14 in their 9th week on the chart. Number 13, You Better Run, Pat Benatar again. 14, Late in the Evening, Paul Simon, down 3 positions. And number 15, All Night Long by Joe Walsh. The 10th and final week on the singles chart, the last of the original top 15 songs on chart number 1 back in August.
So sad. So it's the number 12 song there, All Out of Love by Air Supply, somehow moved up 2 spots. So it's jumped over, You Better Run and Late in the Evening. And again, just like the Monks going up and down, I have no idea why All Out of Love was more popular that week than it was the week before. Now, on the albums chart, the only real mover was Split Ends. So at number 1, you had Queen, The Game for the 4th week. At number 2, you had Bad Habits by the Monks at number 2 for also a 4th week. Number 3 was True Colors, Split Ends, up 3 in their second week and the week's fastest mover. Number 4, Pat Benatar was down 1 with Crimes of Passion. Also down 1 was Supertramp's live album called Paris. Do you know where that was recorded? There's somewhere specific, I think. It wasn't at Budokan. I think that might have been Cheap Trick and Bob Dylan and every other. Okay. While you do that, number 7 is Diana by Diana Ross, steady at number 7 in her second week on the chart. Number 8, Glass Houses by Billy Joel, up 2. I have no idea. Christopher Cross debut is down 1. And number 10, holding on, is the great Pete Townsend, his solo album called Empty Glass.
Okay, so what I thought is, and I'm correct, so the band was touring all over the place, and they used their own mobile studio, which there are very few at this time, and they brought it around to a bunch of shows in Canada and throughout Europe. When they were reviewing all the shows, they, all voted. The band voted, and the mix engineer voted on, which songs from which performance was going to make the cut. And they did a blind test, and almost all of them came from their November 29th show at the Pavilion in France.
Paris, France, Supertramp. So what you're telling me, if the best tracks had all been recorded in London, Ontario, because they performed in London, Ontario, the summer of 1979, the album would have been called London instead of Paris.
Maybe they would have stooped that low. Yes.
And 99.9% of the entire world would go, oh, London, England. We'd be like, no. They were so huge in 1979. It is crazy. So with the addition of Split Enz and Diana Ross albums, two older titles left the charts in October. Jason, who would they be?
Oh, that's Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band at number 1, and number 2, Duke by Genesis.
Both great albums. Now, for comparison purposes, singles-wise for this week, Toronto's powerhouse station Chum FM had Dreamer by Supertramp at number 1. London CJBK, Windsor's CKLW, and Canada's RPM Magazine had Another One Bites the Dust at number 1, while over in the USA, Billboard's new number 1 was Woman in Me by Barbra Streisand.
Canada had much better number 1s than the US at the time. Okay, well, and speaking of albums, on the album charts, CJBK and RPM Magazine had Queen's The Game at number 1, while Streisand's Guilty took over the top spot on Billboard.
Now, Jason, from a sound engineer standpoint, were there any songs that stood out for you from October 1980?
Yeah, I Got You by Split Enz. Same thing I said about Midsummer earlier on. They really set a mood with the song, and I think for the first time in the 80s, I'd have to go listen to everything, but they really nailed the perfect blend between, live rock instruments, drums, electric guitars, whatever, and synths. They just, those synthesizers, keyboards, and sound effects just really sat in with the band so much better in this song than anything previous of the 80s, I think.
Do you think that's because of their experience? They've been around now for 5 years. This is their 6th album. Like, they have to be a band at this point. Like, they're not just, 5 guys who said, hey, let's get a band together. And, in, 8 months, they have an album out with a surprise hit. Like, have you listened to the actual True Colors, like the whole album?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I listened to it a while ago. I would say you're right on the money with that. I mean, where they nailed it because they're a band and they're a unit and they've been doing this a while. I think that's where I'm a Wanderer by Donna Summer falls apart. It's a bunch of session guys. Everything was layered on later and at different times. People weren't playing together in the studio. So I think those synthesizers just feel kind of pasted on top of the rock sounds. Whereas with I Got You, it's like this performance and it doesn't feel synthetic, even though the keyboards and the sounds coming out of them are synthetic. So that for sure. And then, well, Hit Me With Your Best Shot probably has the best and most memorable guitar solo of the 1980s, I think. Neil Giraldo played Pat Benatar's husband. He played on everybody's songs back then. I mean, Jesse's Girl, that's him.
Right.
He had
at the start of it. Yep. I saw him perform.
Yeah.
We went to a concert in Detroit a few years ago. It was a Cher concert, but Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo were the opening act. So, and again, I've loved Pat Benatar right from the get-go. But I'd never seen her live, and they came out, and honest to God, like, if they did 10 or 12 songs, if we would have stood up at the end of that, I would have went, wow, that was an amazing concert. But that was one of the things that he specifically did when he was talking about, records. And he goes, I think you might have heard this song. And he starts playing the opening licks to Jesse's Girl. And he said, well, the story is that for whatever reason, Rick Springfield could not nail the start of that. He nailed it for the next 40 years, though, somehow on live versions. But whatever, that day in the studio, he couldn't do it. And Neil just came up and he did it. And that's him on the record.
I've actually heard Rick complain about it. He said, I did it just fine. If you listen to the demo, I nail it. They just wanted to bring in a ringer, and I was upset about it at the time, but now I'm happy, whatever, because the song made him enough money. I'm sure he doesn't care now. Okay, John, what's your favorite lyric of the week?
My favorite lyric of the week is actually from I Got You by Split Enz. And I think it's like the second verse, and it goes, "Look at you, you're a pageant. You're everything that I've imagined. Something's wrong. I feel uneasy. Reassure me. Tell me you're not teasing." For whatever reason, I always just love that whole "look at you, you're a pageant." It just says everything. You don't know if it's a good pageant, a bad pageant. She's a winner. She's a loser. All right, well, that concludes our review of charts 8, 9, and 10 of 106 for the weeks ending October 11th, 18th, and 25th, 1980. So be sure to like and follow our Facebook and Instagram pages where you'll find relevant pictures, information, and of course, the actual typewritten charts to review and debate among yourselves, family, and friends.
And feel free to give us your comments about the show. Leave us your comments about the songs that you loved in the early 80s. We'd love to hear from you.
Now, be sure to check us out next week when we'll learn about 3 new singles, one of which will soon dethrone the mighty Queen at number 1.
The Music Virgins No More podcast was recorded in Amherstburg, Ontario and Lloydminster, Alberta.
Good day, everyone. This is co-host John Schlarbaum, here to inform you that a new companion book to the podcast is now out. Titled Music Virgin No More, I delve deeper into how my weekly charts began and why the music from the early 80s still influences the preferences of millions of listeners 45 years later. Again, the book is Music Virgin No More, a fun and easy read filled with facts about the singles, albums, and groups you still love today. Purchase your copy on Amazon for only $15, and thanks for downloading today's episode, which begins right now.